All right, awesome. Let's get to our first presenter. With renewable energy on the rise, currently cities don't have enough space to install large quantities of solar panels without them being shaded by skyscrapers. But our first presenter asked, what if every window could be a solar panel? This summer, she had been working to make that happen with transparent solar panels using quantum dots at AMP Solar and the University of Waterloo. Let's hear it for our first presenter of the day, Cassia Attard.
Thank you, Lauren. When I was little, my grandma would always give me these massive plates of food. And she would tell me to make sure that I finished them so she didn't have to waste any of it. But I could only eat this small portion of it, and then she'd have to throw the rest out. Then a few hours later, she'd catch me rummaging through her cupboards for a snack. I was literally given what I needed, but we wasted it anyway. This is how the world is approaching solar energy. Every 4 seconds, the world consumes the same amount of energy that's released in a large nuclear explosion. That's a lot of energy. But in those same 4 seconds, the world is getting enough energy from the sun to power the Earth for 10 hours. That means every hour, the Earth is getting hit with enough solar energy to power the world for a full year. But why aren't we using this abundant renewable resource? That's because current solar technology kind of sucks. Since their invention, typical silicon solar panels, their efficiency skyrocketed. But in the last 20 years, the innovation for this type of panel totally plateaued. On top of that, solar is expensive, and we're using a lot of space to install this technology that isn't improving. But what if we could create cheap and efficient solar panels that could be integrated into existing infrastructure? This is what quantum dots can do. Quantum dots are a semiconductive nanoparticle that's zero-dimensional. And that means that they're really small and have great electrical properties to be a solar panel. And when I say really small, I am talking a solar cell that is 1/10,000th the width of a human hair. And these quantum dots have the ability to make cheap and efficient solar panels that are totally transparent. Now, this may seem like a pretty far-fetched idea. Tiny dots that can create transparent solar cells, but this is actually a technology that exists right now. And in fact, earlier this year, I made my own. It took some trial and error, but eventually I got them to fluoresce. And then I worked on this at some labs at the University of Waterloo and at AMP Solar. Even companies like Samsung are using quantum dots to make QD TVs because they have great electrical properties to make an HD screen. They can do this because when you put energy into a quantum dot, it releases light. That's how the screen works. Now, because quantum mechanics is linear, when you put light into a quantum dot, it releases energy. That's how a solar quantum dot works. But how do they do this so efficiently? Imagine how efficient you could be if you could effectively multitask. This is how solar quantum dots work. They multitask. Typical silicon solar cells only use a very narrow sliver of the wavelength of light we get from the sun, and that's visible light and a bit of infrared. They can't multitask. But solar quantum dots can use UV light and infrared light while letting visible light through. And this allows it to still be a great window. Now, they can do this because when you change the size of a quantum dot, you change its band gap, or you change the color of light that it absorbs. So when you layer several different sizes of quantum dots onto one panel, you can absorb whatever kind of light, whatever color of light you choose. So they can multitask. And this allows solar quantum dots to have a 30% higher theoretical potential efficiency than the solar we're using right now. So quantum dots work efficiently, and they're scalable because we can input it into existing infrastructure. But what about the economics of all this? Well, it's estimated that because of advancements in solar quantum technology, the solar energy market will be worth $500 billion globally by year 2030. So this is an actual potential solution to the setbacks of the energy revolution. So what's the catch? Well, solar quantum dots do have a few problems of their own. Firstly, When light hits a plane of quantum dots, the electron that's bounced off has to bounce between quantum dots before it gets to an electrode on the outside of the solar panel. Now, in this process of transportation, some energy is lost. One potential solution to this is using carbon nanotubes to transport the electron directly to the electrode, like a superconductive highway for the electron. Another problem is that quantum dots are made of highly toxic materials. Now, luckily, there are some really smart people coming up with different chemical compositions to make these quantum dots that aren't toxic. Once we've surpassed these barriers, the energy game could change completely. Imagine a world where the city's buildings power everything. As Toronto becomes a smarter city, the buildings could not only power themselves, but sell that energy back to the grid and power an entire region. Current solar technology is inefficient and it's expensive. On top of that, we don't have the space in our cities to put in solar without buildings shading this area. And this prevents scalability. Quantum dots can cheaply and efficiently integrate solar into our existing infrastructure, and this is a clear solution. Thank you.